You're very good at eating up time and playing politics, so I'd really love if you could just try and give me direct answers. It's been a lot of skirting around. I've heard you talk about America not pulling punches multiple times. That's because we're not throwing any. I want to talk about something that Chairman McCall brought up, which is failure of compliance. You keep talking about how the State Department's been very compliant, but we've had to sign multiple subpoenas in an effort to try and get things, to include the 23 members who signed the dissent cables that you're very aware of. So it's disingenuous to even make such a comment, and I just want to go ahead and point that out for the record. I want to ask about competitor versus adversary. Can you describe what the difference between competition and adversary is?
Your question is, what's the difference between an adversary and a competitor?
Yes, I appreciate you eating up 30 seconds to try and do that. Yes.
Well, Congressman, that's not what I'm trying to do. We spend every day on these issues. I spend a lot of time
I'm asking
to
for the
prepare
definition,
for this.
please.
I didn't come prepared to give you a formal definition, but I'm happy to
Do you
take
consider
that on.
China a competitor or an adversary?
I would argue that they're both.
Okay. And I would agree that they are an adversary more than anything, especially if you look at the geopolitical alignment between China, Russia, Iran, North Korea, and the economic resource and cyber-based warfare that's been launched for 20-plus years against the West. I think we look at the expansion of the Belt and Road Initiative. I think that we look at the domination of rare earth mineral mines throughout the continent of Africa. I think that we recognize that China's adversarial actions has led to a disruption in supply chain capability, which is the intent. That's why they want to expand the Eurasian borders, take Africa, take Oceania, recreate the maritime Silk Route, if you will, to choke off Western Hemisphere supply chain. But they're also utilizing economic coercion in our own Western Hemisphere, as we're seeing with Honduras and Panama, where they're trying to take over the canal for tariffs and trade and other types of warfare, and then utilize that marriage of convenience with Russia for the Chavez of Venezuela and Pedro in Colombia, now building spy and joint training bases 92 miles off of my state, the state of Florida, right there in Cuba. So I think that's adversarial actions more so than competitive actions. I will go, though, and say that the day after Secretary Blinken's trip to China, President Biden referred to General Secretary Xi as a dictator. Do you agree that General Xi is a dictator?
Congressman, I don't have anything further to add. I think the President's words speak for themselves. I think
So do you agree with the President's words?
I think the White House spokesperson and the Secretary have already spoken to that. The
Sir,
President
do you agree with the
speaks plainly. He
President's-
speaks for the American people.
Sir, do you agree with President Biden's comment?
I stand by what I said, Congressman. I don't have anything to add.
No yes,
beyond-
no, no?
I don't have anything to add.
Okay, thanks so much for your non-answer.
Congressman,
We're going to move on, reclaiming my time, sir. Secretary Blinken also stated recently that the U.S. seeks to coexist peacefully with China. Was it U.S. policy during the Cold War to seek peaceful coexistence with the Soviet Union, who we declared as having a dictator? Was it U.S. policy during World War II to seek peaceful coexistence with Nazi Germany, which we called Hitler a dictator? Because both Soviet Union and Nazi Germany were run by dictators, correct?
Congressman, I've tried to lay out, we have a really consequential and complex relationship with China. We have a long list of concerns, many of which you've already outlined. We approach those in a resolute and realistic manner, and we're absolutely committed to doing everything possible to defend our interests and those of our allies. And
well, I can tell you one of those
we're
would be to
proud of what
separate-
we've done, and we're confident in what we've done.
Secretary, I'd say that one of those would be to recognize also that WHO and WEF is being weaponized and utilized in an effort to also try to gain further, ingratiating behaviors by China to try and create this hegemony, not to mention the fact that they're cozying up to OPEC to try and utilize that as an energy warfare against us. And meanwhile, we just had former Secretary Kerry come in here and talk about how the greatest existential threat is climate change, not what we actually really are seeing, which is China as our greatest existential threat. I'm going to ask one more thing, which is in regards to Taiwan. I just came back from the first and second chain of islands a few weeks ago, and I can tell you that the over $19 billion that's being held up by the Directorate of Defense Trade Control, which does exist under the CivMilPol for State Department, is still yet to actually approve and send the materials that are necessary for Taiwan. Is there a reason for this?
Congressman, I think it's realistic to talk about holding up $19 billion worth of arms sales. I think, as you know, this is a complicated process. It takes time. We do
Sir,
recognize.
I'm very aware
we
of
do
Form
recognize-
5, Form 2, DSP 83s, DSP 5s. I understand the defense process and mechanism. I've also seen where companies like Northrop Grumman, Lockheed, and others have gotten within 90 days an approval for the DSP 5 export approvals to send to Iraq and Ukraine and other countries, and yet this has been months and months and months of being held up. And so, no, you obviously don't know the process for the DSP 83 and DSP 5. If you did, then you'd also know the ATF's Form 2, Form 5, Form 9 process as well. This is something I'm aware of.
Gentleman's time's up.
Congressman, I'll just reiterate, we're doing everything within our means to meet our commitments under the Taiwan Relations Act. We've taken extraordinary steps. We're also taking extraordinary steps to reduce some of the delays that you've referred to.
The gentleman's time's up. Let me now recognize Representative Castro for